The 1970s were full of songs that sounded perfectly innocent on the radio, until they weren't. Parents had no idea. Kids sang along without a clue. And the artists were laughing all the way to the bank. Here are the 12 famous songs from 1970s people didn't realize were filthy. Number 12, The Joker, by Steve Miller Band.
I'm a joker, I'm a smoker, I'm a midnight toker.
Steve Miller Band released The Joker in October 1973, and it went to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in January 1974. It had a lazy, good-natured feel, the kind of song you could hum without really processing what was being said. Millions of people did exactly that.
'Cause I'm a picker, I'm a grinner, I'm a lover.
Miller had given himself several nicknames across the band's earlier recordings. The Gangster of Love came from Living in the USA. Maurice came from Enter Maurice. The Joker tied all of them together and added one more, Midnight Toker, a phrase that left no real room for ambiguity once you considered it. It referred directly to marijuana use, and yet radio stations across the country played it without hesitation, in part because it was delivered with such a casual drawl that it barely registered as anything other than playful self-mythology.
I'm a midnight toker.
The most enduring mystery in the song is the word pompatus. Miller used it in an earlier track and brought it back here, and for decades no one could agree on what it actually meant or where it came from. The consensus eventually settled on the idea that Miller had encountered the word in a 1954 doo-wop recording by the Medallions, where singer Vernon Green had used a similar term he had invented himself. Green later said it was a word he made up to describe a kind of love that was difficult to describe. Miller borrowed it and made it famous. Whether it means anything at all is still something music historians disagree about. What is agreed upon is that The Joker spent years on classic rock radio, without most listeners registering anything more than a cheerful, rambling good time.
And I'm a joker, I'm a smoker, I'm a midnight toker.
Number 11, Love to Love You Baby, by Donna Summer. Donna Summer recorded Love to Love You Baby in 1975, and its path to becoming a hit is one of the more unusual stories in the history of disco. The song was produced by Giorgio Moroder and Pete Bellotte in Munich. Summer performed the extended vocal take alone in the studio with the lights off, reportedly to help herself feel less inhibited. What she delivered was a performance that simulated a sexual encounter from beginning to end, using breathy moaning and rhythmic vocal phrasing across nearly the entire track. The original album version ran for almost 17 minutes. The single edit was considerably shorter, but the intent was unchanged. Casablanca Records president Neil Bogart played the extended version at a party he was hosting, and the reaction was immediate and enthusiastic enough that he called Moroder and asked for more of the song, the 16-minute version that became one of the most talked-about recordings of the decade. Time magazine called the full-length version a 17-minute orgasm. The BBC banned it outright, refusing to air it on the grounds that it was too sexually explicit for broadcast. In the United States, most radio stations played only the edited single version and left the content of what they were broadcasting largely unexamined. The song reached number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and helped establish Summer as one of the defining voices of disco. Parents who heard the radio edit and found it inoffensive would have had a very different reaction to the full album version, but most of them never encountered it. Number 10, Lady Marmalade, by LaBelle. LaBelle released Lady Marmalade in late 1974, and it reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in March 1975. Written by Bob Crewe and Kenny Nolan, the song tells the story of a New Orleans sex worker, and its chorus features a line of French that translates directly to, "Do you want to sleep with me tonight?" A question delivered with full confidence that most American audiences in 1974 would not know what it meant. Most of them didn't. including, famously, Patti LaBelle herself. In a 2015 interview with The Guardian, LaBelle explained that when the group recorded the song, she genuinely did not understand the French lyric or what the song was fully about. "We thought it was a woman just walking down the street," she said. "We were very innocent, and I had no clue. I was very naive." Then we had some controversy about a nun being upset about the song, and we found out. The song was bold enough that some radio stations refused to air it, while others played it constantly without apparent concern about its subject matter. The combination of French lyrics, a funk and soul arrangement, and LaBelle's powerful vocal delivery gave the record a theatrical quality that allowed many listeners to experience it as something more like a performance piece than a straightforward account of what it was actually describing. Patti LaBelle has since performed the song thousands of times with full awareness of what she's singing. But, at the time of the original recording, she was the last person in the room who knew. Number 9. Only the Good Die Young by Billy Joel.
Only the good die young.
Billy Joel released Only the Good Die Young in 1977 from his album The Stranger, and it reached number 24 on the Billboard Hot 100. The song is a first-person narrative by a young man trying to convince a Catholic girl to abandon her religious restraint and sleep with him. It says this directly and without much disguise, but it says it cheerfully, over a piano-driven rock arrangement that sounded like a rollicking good time rather than anything with an agenda. The girl in the song is named Virginia, which Joel has confirmed was a deliberate choice, a name that carries its own associations with purity and chastity, and doubles as the obvious shorthand for what the narrator is hoping she'll give up.
Only the good die young. Only the good.
The Catholic Archdiocese of New York reportedly requested that radio stations stop playing it. Several did, briefly. At least one station, WIBA in Madison, Wisconsin, banned it entirely. The ban generated enough attention that it arguably did more to promote the record than any airplay might have. And Joel has reflected in later interviews that the controversy gave the song a cultural footprint significantly larger than its chart position alone would have suggested. Joel has said he wrote it from a place of genuine frustration with institutions that told young people what they couldn't do or feel. Whether the song's subject saw it that way is, of course, not recorded. The record remains one of Joel's most frequently played, and the argument it makes, delivered over a piano riff and a strong backbeat, has been absorbed by generations of listeners who, in many cases, were hearing the pitch being made to the girl without ever considering that they might be in the position of the girl being pitched to.
Only the good die young.
Number 8. Walk This Way by Aerosmith. Aerosmith released Walk This Way in 1975 from their album Toys in the Attic. And while it became one of the band's signature songs, the speed and frantic rhythm of Steven Tyler's vocal delivery made the actual content of the lyrics easy to miss on first listen, or 5th, or 20th. Tyler explained the song's content directly in the book Walk This Way, the band's 1997 memoir. The song is a sequential narrative. It follows a teenage boy from adolescence through his first sexual experience, told with a specificity that Tyler described in plain terms. The opening imagery he described as depicting masturbation. The rest of the song follows the character's encounter with a cheerleader and her relatives, which results in the loss of his virginity. Tyler's explanation of the song's contents, delivered in that memoir, is considerably more graphic than anything in the lyrics themselves, which remain just coded enough to have played on radio stations across America without generating serious complaints. The song found a second massive audience in 1986 when Run DMC recorded their famous collaboration with Aerosmith, introducing it to an entirely new generation of listeners who were equally unlikely to process the specifics of what Tyler had been describing for 11 years by that point. Number 7. My Sharona by The Knack. The Knack released My Sharona in June 1979, and it went to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, where it stayed for 6 weeks, making it the longest-running number 1 single of that year. It was an explosive debut, and it drove the band's first album, Get the Knack, to sell over 5 million copies. The song's energy was undeniable. What was less apparent to many listeners was what it was actually about. Lead singer Doug Fieger wrote the song about a real person, Sharona Alperin, his girlfriend at the time, whom he met in 1978 when she was 17 years old and he was 25. The song expresses a breathless, physical obsession with her in terms that leave little to interpretation once you slow down to listen. The lyrics describe an involuntary physical response, a fixation on physical contact, and an urgency that is explicitly sexual rather than romantic in any conventional sense. Fieger and Alperin later dated for 4 years before separating. She went on to become a real estate agent in Los Angeles, where she became moderately well known for her work in the real estate market, including selling homes to celebrities. The song that introduced her to millions of listeners remains one of the most relentlessly catchy records of the decade, which was part of what allowed its actual content to pass so comfortably through mainstream radio without serious pushback. Number 6. Love Roller Coaster by Ohio Players. Ohio Players released Love Roller Coaster in 1975 as part of their album Honey, and it went to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in January 1976. The Ohio Players were known as much for their album artwork as for their music. Their covers featured provocative images of women in various states of undress, and the Honey album was no exception, featuring a woman apparently covered in the title substance. The music inside those covers matched the visual aesthetic. Love Roller Coaster functions through layers of metaphor, using the amusement park ride as a sustained image for a sexual encounter. The ups and downs, the thrill, the acceleration, the moment of release at the top. The song moves through these stages with considerable enthusiasm, and the vocal performances support the metaphor at every turn. For younger listeners and anyone who took the amusement park framing at face value, it was a funky dance record. For anyone paying closer attention, it was something considerably more direct. The song also became one of the more bizarre footnotes in pop music history because of a scream audible in the recording. An urban legend spread, reportedly amplified by a DJ in California and later picked up by Casey Kasem on American Top 40, that the scream came from someone being murdered during the recording session. Various versions of the story implicated different victims and different perpetrators. None of them were true. The Ohio Players have offered various explanations over the years for where the scream actually came from. Whatever its source, it became one of the most famous pieces of incidental audio in 1970s music. Number 5. Rosie by Jackson Browne.
Rosie, all right. You wear my ring.
Jackson Browne released Rosie in 1977 from his live album Running on Empty. The album was recorded entirely on the road, on tour buses, in hotel rooms, backstage, and on stage, and it captured a particular kind of intimacy that made even the more straightforward tracks feel personal. Rosie told a story set backstage at a concert, describing a sound technician who watches a girl he'd been flirting with leave with the band's drummer instead.
When you hold me tight, Rosie, that's my thing.
That's the story on the surface. The chorus tells a different story. Once the chorus makes clear that Rosie is not the girl from the show, but a colloquial name for the narrator's own hand, the song is about masturbation, and it says so with a winking candor that stops just short of being explicit. The whole song reorients itself around the joke. Browne delivers it with the same earnest, acoustic folk sincerity he brings to everything else he recorded, which makes the reveal even funnier once it lands. Running on Empty reached number 3 on the Billboard 200 and spent 28 weeks on the chart. Rosie became one of its better-known tracks. Performed as a crowd favorite at live shows where audiences who understood the joke were often surrounded by people who did not. It remains one of the more quietly audacious songs in the soft rock canon.
Rosie, you're alright. You wear my ring.
Number 4. Afternoon Delight by Starland Vocal Band. Starland Vocal Band reached number 1 with Afternoon Delight in July 1976, and it won 2 Grammy Awards, Best New Artist and Best Arrangement for Voices, before the band's commercial momentum collapsed almost immediately afterward. The song is built from 4-part harmony, a gentle pop melody, and lyrics about sneaking home in the middle of the day for sex. It is one of the most cheerful songs about a midday sexual encounter ever to top the American charts. Bill Danoff, who wrote it, said he deliberately set out not to write an obvious sex song. He wanted something fun and suggestive without being explicit, and he succeeded in building a double meaning that was transparent once you looked at it, but invisible to anyone who didn't. The title itself combines a time of day with a word for pleasure. The lyrics describe the anticipation of getting home, the lighting of a spark, the imagery of warmth and satisfaction. None of it stated directly, all of it clear. The song became famous again in 2004, when the film Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy, featured an extended a cappella rendition of it by the film's cast, introducing it to an entirely new audience who, in many cases, then looked up the original and discovered what they had been missing. The 1976 version remains exactly as warm and innocent sounding as it ever was. The content has not changed. Number 3. Escape, the Pina Colada Song by Rupert Holmes.
If you like pina coladas.
Rupert Holmes released Escape, better known as the Pina Colada Song, in 1979, and it reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, the last number 1 single of the decade. It was a breezy, pleasant piece of soft pop with an acoustic guitar feel, and its story was one of the more remarkable pieces of situational comedy ever to be packaged as a love song.
If you're not into yoga.
Holmes, who wrote it, was explicit about what the song is. A man bored with his relationship reads a personal ad from a woman looking for a partner. He responds. They agree to meet. When he gets to the bar, the woman waiting for him is his own girlfriend. She had placed the ad because she was equally bored with him and had been looking for someone new. Rather than confront what this means about their relationship, they laugh it off and apparently reconcile over shared preferences in cocktails and outdoor activities. The cheerful arrangement, Holmes delivers the whole story with a voice as warm as a vacation brochure, meant that many listeners absorbed the song as a light-hearted romantic story, without pausing to register that both members of a committed couple had actively attempted to arrange affairs with strangers. Holmes said he found it amusing that the song's dark comic premise was almost universally missed on first listen. The song closed out the 1970s at number 1, which felt, in retrospect, like exactly the right ending for a decade that had hidden so much in plain sight.
If you like pina coladas.
Number 2. Voulez-vous by ABBA. ABBA released Voulez-vous in April 1979, and it became a major international hit, reaching number 1 in several countries and number 80 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the United States. The Swedish supergroup had built their reputation on perfect pop construction, glossy production, and lyrics that often carried a bittersweet emotional quality beneath the glittering surface. Voulez-vous did something slightly different. The song's title is a French phrase. Voulez-vous coucher avec moi ce soir means, do you want to sleep with me tonight? The full phrase appears in the bridge of the song, sung in French amid the English lyrics. In the United States and Britain, the majority of the listening public either didn't speak French or didn't connect the phrase to its literal translation. The song sounded like a high-energy, mysterious dance track, and it was consumed accordingly. The phrase was not unfamiliar in popular music. It had appeared in LaBelle's Lady Marmalade 5 years earlier. But in ABBA's hands, wrapped in driving disco production and delivered with the combined vocal power of Agnetha Fältskog and Frida Lyngstad, it slipped past the attention of most radio audiences. ABBA's image was family-friendly, and that image did a great deal of work in determining how their music was received. A song that asked its listeners, in perfectly standard French, whether they wanted to go to bed together, was absorbed by those listeners as a fun night out at the club. Number 1. Le Freak by Chic. Chic released Le Freak in September 1978, and it became one of the biggest-selling singles in the history of Atlantic Records, spending 6 weeks at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. The song was certified 4 times platinum, and it remains one of the defining recordings of the disco era. The story of how it came to exist, and what it was originally going to say, was not widely known for years. Nile Rodgers and Bernard Edwards, the architects of Chic, wrote the song after being refused entry to Studio 54 on New Year's Eve 1977, even though they had been personally invited by Grace Jones, who was performing inside. The doorman turned them away regardless, apparently not recognizing either of them. They went back to Rodgers' apartment, picked up their instruments, and started writing. By Rodgers' own account, they played well past midnight in a state of frustration and wounded pride. The song that emerged had a chorus that was considerably more direct in its language than what eventually appeared on radio. The word the chorus originally contained, directed at Studio 54 and everyone inside it, was not freak. Atlantic Records requested that the lyric be rewritten before release. Rodgers and Edwards complied, replacing the original word with freak and repurposing the song from a rejection of the club to an invitation onto the dance floor. The rewrite was commercially inspired and commercially staggering. The guitar riff underneath it became one of the most sampled pieces of music in the history of recorded sound, underlying dozens of subsequent hits across 3 decades. The polished, radio-friendly version of the song that topped the charts is one of the great pieces of accidental restraint in popular music. A song born from profane fury at being excluded from a party that became, in its final form, one of the smoothest, most ubiquitous dance records the decade produced. Rodgers later said that if they had kept the original word, the song probably would never have been released at all, which means that getting turned away at the door was, financially speaking, one of the best things that ever happened to them. The 1970s were full of songs that slipped past the radar, too catchy to examine closely, too familiar to question. If any of these made you think twice about a song you've heard 1,000 times, drop it in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, hit like and subscribe. There's a lot more where this came from.